Okay. No script.
Okay,
Just authentic conversation.
let's do this.
For those who don't know, I will introduce Teresa Bybee. It's over here this time. I forgot. Again, excuse the camera angles. I haven't figured it out yet. She is an amazing mother, an entrepreneur, a scholar, a wisdom giver, and just a resilient woman.
Thank you.
Of course. She's been through a lot. And I feel a lot of people could get a lot from your story. So, welcome back to the Broken Collective. Thank you for listening. This one's probably going to be long, like the last one. So, split it into 2 parts, split it into 2 days, but you don't want to miss any of it. So, that being said, this is Teresa. And first, let's just start with childhood. What was that like for you?
I am a pastor's kid, was a pastor's kid. I moved to Montana when I was about 5, 4 or 5, for my dad to take a job at a church. And it was his first experience as a pastor, and went through seminary while he was raising us and worked at that church and then planted a church on the south side. And I have 3 siblings, and I am the third. I have a brother and 2 sisters.
Nice. How is that dynamic?
Between my siblings and I, it's all pretty good. We don't see each other a whole lot in adulthood. My brother's in Washington, and my sister, I have one sister moving back from Helena, and then I have another sister up north of Great Falls. So, and she's my younger one. So when growing up, her and I were like pals. That she was my playmate, but I'm excited to have my older sister moving back.
Nice. Where does your younger sister live?
It's in Shodo. I
Okay.
don't know. It's about an hour north of Great Falls.
Okay.
Half hour or an hour, somewhere like that.
Nice. Nice. I go up to Havre quite a bit, and I didn't know if they were close, but
It's way up there.
that's seeing like Canada that way. It's trippy.
Yeah, when you start to see it on the signs.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your childhood. You grew up as a pastor's kid. Your dad planted a church here. Was that in Billings or was that in a different city?
No, it was here in Billings on the south side. It was called Grace Community Church.
Nice. Nice. And as the pastor's kid, what did church look like for you back then? Because it looks way different from your perspective.
I grew up going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. And then when I was in high school, Friday night always had a youth group function. So that's a lot of church. When I was little, I grew up obviously in Sunday school classes, kids choir, kids plays, Awana, did the Awana program all the way through. It was a generally normal upbringing in the evangelical church.
Nice. Nice. The PKs that I know, they were always there at church and they seemed to really enjoy it. Was it something, sometimes parents have to drag the kids to church? Do you like that?
There's a couple different kinds of PKs. There's your rebellious PKs, and then there's your golden child PKs, and I was the family golden child, and I got called that all the time. I've had to do therapy over it as an adult. But I generally liked it. I liked the church functions. I liked the potlucks. I liked the community. So, no, I didn't mind going.
Good. So then, and what age was that at? What age range?
We moved here when I was 5, so 5 to probably about my junior year when my parents' marriage fell apart. That's just all that I knew was church, church, church.
So that was, I assume that the marriage in the middle of that season was a lot, because not only are you going through a transition from like middle school to high school, you're 2 years in thinking about your future, and then you have your world fall apart.
Yeah, my dad literally just up and left, and they were separated for a year, and then at the beginning of my senior year of high school, he divorced my mom. But was found out that he always had sexual problems throughout the marriage and affairs. And I don't exactly know all of the details of that, but I know that he had several affairs. And so that is always hunky dory when you're running churches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the pedestal I had my dad on, the pedestal I had my church life on, and everything just pretty much crumbled.
Did you feel like you had any control in that time?
No.
Like you had any power to do anything?
No.
Because I felt oddly in my position, because it happened at the same time. My mom called me on the phone and she's like, your dad's going to say this and you're going to say this and he's going to try to take you. And I'm like, listen, I am a junior in high school. Hold your poop in a group until I graduate. Your lack of communication and lack of whatever, because theirs was just communication. They never talked. So I said, you're going to hold that together. I'm not going to let you ruin my experience. After I'm graduated, fine. Go scorched earth. I don't care. But don't do it now.
So you basically told your parents what to do.
Yeah.
Listen?
And they did.
They did?
They did.
It
It was crazy.
No, I didn't get that option. We did have the board of the church. I remember, and I don't know why it was appropriate for me to be in this meeting, but I remember sitting with elders of the church and sitting in there with, I think, my mom, and my dad was in there. And I specifically remember sharing, like, because it was supposed to be like a mediation type thing, how tore up my heart was. And I specifically remember one of the board members laughing at me. And I'm 48 now. And that was probably when I was 16 or 17. And I still remember it.
That's crazy.
I just felt so vulnerable and ripped open. And then the adults in my life nobody had time to pour into the kids because their lives were exploding too. So I just felt like a paper bag in the wind.
Yeah, it seems almost like you were, like it was being treated as a court case. Present your case to the jury and try to change their hearts.
Yeah, I don't really remember the premise of the meeting or why it took place, but I don't even know why I was there. But I think it was to try to keep my parents together or whatever. And I probably would have done anything to keep my parents together because that was really painful. Yeah. And then I didn't know who to choose. It was, at that age, it was torturous. You got to live with your mom or your dad. I didn't want to choose. And so I spent my senior year bouncing around from house to house. At that point, I was going to Billings Christian, and I lived with a friend's family for a really long time. But my senior year, I was pretty nomadic.
That's hard. My cousin used to have to pack a suitcase. She did it week to week.
Yeah.
She had to pack a suitcase, and it's like she lived out of that. And that was just like, and now my little brother has to do the same thing. It's just like his life is condensed to a bag and between people.
So many kids live that way. A week with mom, a week with dad. And I think they try to have as much of their stuff at both houses so there's less packing back and forth. Like they got the wardrobe at dad's, the wardrobe at mom's, but inevitably there's usually a house you feel more comfortable at, that most of your stuff is at. And it's a giant pain in the butt.
Yeah. So how were your older siblings grown at that point, or were they in the mix as well?
No, my two older ones, I think they were both married. Okay. And so it was just me and then my younger sister. And my younger sister, too, just fell through the cracks. I almost said craps. She did not fall through the craps. She fell through the cracks and dropped out of school and was hanging out with a rough crowd. And we just were left to fend for ourselves. I was fending for myself at a Christian private school. Somebody stepped forward my senior year and offered to pay my tuition that year, or I wouldn't have been able to finish high school there, which was a very kind blessing.
So did that stick with you after, because I know you never forget it and it always changes you, but did you notice a continual impact on your life after high school, or when you left high school, was it more of this happened, but I'm my own person now and I can make a life for myself?
No, I think that I tried really hard to maintain a relationship with my dad, and I've never had a problem maintaining a relationship with my mom. So it was always a little bit of work with my dad post divorce, mostly because he was jumping from relationship to relationship. And so that was the challenge for me is he would get remarried and then I would open my heart. I didn't want to be that daughter that was just awful to his new wife or something. So I always opened my heart and tried to be kind and get to know the new wife and the new kids. But that cycle just didn't stop. So at some point, things got pretty toxic in my mid 40s, probably. And I actually don't have contact with him. But
That sucks.
yeah.
I was the opposite of that. My mom got engaged 6 months after the divorce. And it was like she wanted me to be the kid that accepted people and got to know people and fit in with people. And I was like, I don't know this person. They just uprooted my whole life. I'm here because I'm not going to say no to my mom. But don't
To
expect
be fair,
more.
I don't think I went to his first. I haven't gone to any of his weddings. So when he did get married at the church that he was the pastor of, that I went to, I didn't go. But after they were married, I did really try. But that's a lot. That's a lot for a kid. And
It is.
6 months, that's a lot to ask of a kid. And so it's okay.
Yeah. I still have some remnants of that. And it's more of I'm very much I'll say I'm closed off. If you're not going to ask for a relationship or you don't show interest, I'm not going to keep asking. And I'm also not going to go up to you and try to be your friend if you're not reaching out. Some of that is like, how are you going to know if they're your friend if you don't ask them first? But when it's a family unit, you should just ask me. And that side of the family may have a different culture. They may do things differently, but I'm still trying to grapple with, like, they say you're always invited. Nobody from their side texted me. And you texted me the day of, not before. So was I really on your mind? Or are you just saying that so I don't feel bad? But I'm trying to work into that. So after high school, what did life look like?
I graduated from Billings Christian. My senior year started dating my would-be husband. And I went down to Oklahoma Wesleyan College and did 2 semesters down there. And then I got married. And then I spent my 20s and half my 30s pregnant.
Kudos to you.
Okay, I'll take it.
So when you met your husband-to-be, I've always had a question. Was it like, I know this is the person? Or was it like, I like you a lot?
Not
I like
for
you a little
me.
bit
He
more?
said on his end that he remembers specifically what I was wearing. So I remember because he's said it so much, but I had long blonde hair, obviously, and I had it pulled back with a sunflower clip. It was just a big sunflower back here. And I had just gotten back from Michigan and I had a Nike blue sweatshirt on with a yellow swoosh. And then I had Ralph Lauren long jeans on, and he remembers that outfit. And when he saw me, he felt like he knew me because he saw me in a dream, like that he had a dream about me. That's his story. He might have changed it now, but that was always his story. For me, he was just a new kid. My graduating class had 12 kids, so he was a new kid, and he was a hilarious kid, and he was good at basketball, and so it was somebody that I hung out with and had fun and laughed. And I really thought that he and my other friend Molly were going to start dating. So it took me a little bit to see him that way. But ultimately, if you make me belly laugh, over the course of a few months, I'll probably marry you. I do like to laugh.
That's a good way to someone's heart.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said mid-20s to 30s you were just having kids.
I had my first baby at 22.
Okay.
And then so in 98, if you go 98 and then do all the even years till 2010, I had a baby. 98, 2000, 02, 04, 06, 08, and 10. And they weren't intentionally timed, and some of them are closer than what the calendar looks like. Like I had my last two when my baby was 5 months old. I found out I was pregnant with number 7.
Oh,
Yeah. He went to the doctor in that pregnancy.
that's crazy. Okay, so first, what was it like having a child at the very first time? And second, how did that change with the different children? Was it like
I
increasing?
remember the first time they laid the baby in my arms. And I have a niece, Haley, and a niece, Cecily, that when I was in high school, my siblings had babies. And oh my gosh, like I was born for the role of aunt. And I took them everywhere and I loved them. And so when they put the baby in my arms, I felt like I was holding a niece or a nephew. It was just so weird. And then it just hit me like, this is my baby. And it was just the most incredible feeling because I always have wanted to be a mom. And so it just felt, to me, it felt so good and it felt so natural. And then when I found out I was pregnant with my second, I just didn't know how I was going to be able to love another baby as much as I loved my perfect first baby. And then God gave me a screamer. She screamed for 10 months. But I think the thing that I learned the first time I was like, it felt like I was going to have to take love from this child to give love to this child. But what you don't understand until you experience it is that your heart actually grows. And so your capacity for love grows. So it wasn't like I had to love this baby a little less to spread some of the love over here. It just, your capacity to love just increases. And so it was a really incredible process that just didn't really seem to stop. Did I still feel that at the first time they put baby number 6 and baby number 7? They do have names, but when they put them in my arms, still just as magical. Just as magical. The pregnancies, everything, just as magical.
That's interesting that you say your heart grows, because I had a struggle with, okay, I want to help, I want to show the love of Jesus to people, but my cup is half empty. I'm getting low. How do I do this? And I was like, do I do the Christian thing and just give until I have no cup?
No.
That was the answer I got. And then I read the text that said, and I don't remember the text in full, but essentially, I will fill your heart and your cup will overflow, and you give out of that overflow.
And I think that there is a sect of Christianity, as well as even some of the belief system that I picked up in the evangelical church growing up, that love and everything about Christianity is extraordinarily sacrificial. So you sacrifice, and then when you're dead on the floor, you crawl in sacrifice. The problem with that is you're not attending to yourself and to your own needs, which God wired us to have.
Yeah.
I wasn't taught that I had needs. I was taught to attend to the needs of others. And that causes burnout. And if you make it through your 30s, great. But I'm telling you, you'll hit a burnout in your 40s. Yes, you've got to find ways to fill your cup and to acknowledge the fact that God wired us with needs.
Yeah. Nobody talks about that.
No.
Nobody told me that. They're just like, it's a sacrifice.
Yes, and that's how I lived being a wife. I was with my husband for 26 years. We were married for 24. I gave and I gave. And then the same thing with motherhood. And I didn't attend to myself. I was a daughter of Christ. I was created in the image of God. And so for some reason, looking at it that way in evangelicalism can seem selfish, but it's not.
No.
It's not. It is, I think, a more well-rounded faith when I am attending. Because if I'm going to attend to the physical needs of everybody in my family and not attend to myself, I'm going to end up being a shell of a human. And I'm not going to say that I was completely there at the end of my marriage, but I seriously didn't have an identity outside of being my husband's wife and my children's mother.
Did you feel that you had the duty to carry it all yourself?
Yes.
Okay. And having the duty to carry it yourself, you didn't feel like you could ask for help or outside sources?
I tried. I think when I was pregnant with my third, and my oldest was 3, so I was about to have 3 in 3 years. And I remembered just thinking, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was in a Bible study at Faith Chapel called Motherwise, and I thought God put me in the wrong group because it was a bunch of older women and then me. It was like, where's the community in this? Honestly, those older women spoke so much into me as a young mom. They were further down the road. Their kids were older. They weren't still potty training and in the throes of things. They were teenage years. I was worried about my kid peeing in the toilet. They were worried about their teenager sneaking out the window. So they were like, take your problems, honey, take them. But through their encouragement, I wrote a letter to my then husband. And because we are both humorous people, a part of it was satire, but it was also reality. I wrote a list of my responsibilities on one side of the paper and a list of his responsibilities on the other side of the paper. And mine literally went down and down and back and around, like everything from household duties to taking the trash out, to doing the dishes, to cooking, to cleaning, to changing the diapers, to nursing the baby, like everything. And on my husband's side, I wrote, go to work from, I don't remember what his schedule was. We'll just say 8 to 5. And I put in parentheses, I am so filled with gratitude that I got to stay home. So I wanted to make that very known that I'm so thankful that you go to work from 8 to 5. But when he came home, he got to choose between picking up the guitar and playing, or watching TV, or playing a video game, or going and hanging out with his brother. And that is because we were babies when we got married. Yeah. We were babies. So when you're babies and you start having babies, yeah, poop's about to hit the fan in many ways. And when I first gave it to him initially, he was a little ticked off, but then reality set in and he was like, you're absolutely right. And I can't say that shifted a whole lot, but I think just even the awareness and that he did try to maybe be a little bit more helpful with the kids in the evenings. But I definitely naturally took on the role of doer everythinger. I don't know if that's an actual title, but it's my title.
That's a lot. And I feel like and I don't know if this is going to come off the wrong way, but I feel like my generation doesn't see parenthood the same. I think the prior generation before me, so my parents, they understood to an extent what having a child meant. That it was like, okay, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have children, and I know what this is. I'm raising a family, so I expect that. My generation is like, I don't know what a condom is. And guess what landed in your lap?
Oh my. Boom.
So life hits them like that. For my cousin, it was a radical change I didn't think I'd ever see. Because she had to focus on another human being, and seeing the way she's changed is great. But do you think that you should have a child knowing that there will be change?
No, 100%. Your life's going to explode in the most beautifully painful ways. There's integration. There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of play, and there's a lot of exhaustion, and there's a lot of beauty, and it's all intermingled. And so, yeah, if you don't know that, you're going to quickly find out. It's life changing to all of a sudden have part of you outside of you, and now you're responsible to keep it alive. when it just wants to run around and stick paper clips and outlets all day long.
Yeah. I think we need to pay more attention to our actions, for one, but for the impact of others. Because my generation, they just see it as, it felt good. And then they have a kid. One of my friends was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And I was like, you willingly let the thing go in the thing. What did you expect? Is this shocking to you? And I don't think there's a lot of afterthought. So, I guess that being said, know that there's a huge change coming, but also use that as a reminder.
Yeah. And obviously, sex was created by God to procreate children. So
Yeah.
it should never be a shock. Oh, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So I think that we live in a very lust driven society, whether you're high school or 20 somethings, even me being in the dating world now, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. So I think that there can be a disconnect of that. I'm not saying you should only have sex when you want to procreate a child.
Yeah, no.
That's ridiculous. Obviously, God, never mind. We're not going to touch that. But it's just somehow people forget that is how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had 7 children.
Yes.
Was there a time, and I know you said it was about your third, that I can't keep doing this.
My third pregnancy. I was pregnant with Noah.
Okay. What? I mean, it kept. What made you not what made
Continue
you
to have babies?
Continue to have
Sex.
no my head.
You asked.
No.
I guess when we got to 3, I don't know what feeling of completeness we were waiting for, but my 5th child is special needs. The fact that I had 2 more, like, I guess here's the deal. I just didn't do well on birth control. There was not birth control that I did well on physically. And so we just decided between the 2 of us that we would just have babies until we felt like we were done. And we both just had a higher capacity for chaos. And so when I was pregnant with number 7, number 6 was still a baby, but she was having like a failure to thrive at a year because she was having food allergies. And so she was really sick. I was pregnant. I was homeschooling. At one point, my special needs daughter was having seizures. And so it was just like, uncle, I didn't know if that was when I needed to cry uncle, but I did. I was just like, I love pregnancy and I love babies. So I feel like I could have still gone and had, like, my son Caleb was so sad when my husband got a vasectomy because he wanted, I think it was like 16 and counting, but now it's like they've got 20 and now there's a whole show of that it wasn't the greatest behind the scenes. So anyway, he wanted us to have lots of kids, but 7 was where I needed to stop for me and to be able to handle what I had.
Yeah. So you said that love doubles. You must have a huge heart.
Heart is pretty big. I really think that one of the purposes that I am on this planet for is simply to love.
I can attest to that.
And so I just, whether it's the cashier at Walmart or somebody on the street, it's not like I'm going to go up and tell them I love them. But I just really love people. I really do.
And I can tell. I think everyone that interacts with you can tell. So after kids, what was it like parenting adolescents?
A shit show.
And then after that, what was it like having children that were now grown?
There's some of my favorite people on the planet.
Yeah.
I got to raise these people, and I certainly cannot say that I did a perfect job. I definitely wish that I had a time machine and I could go with the wisdom and the knowledge and the inner peace that I have now and be a young mom again. But I can't. But I can just enjoy the heck out of my adult kids. And that's really what I try to do.
Yeah. So can we look at the timeline right before you started to experience, I'll say, turbulence in your life. Do you remember if it was very gradual or if there was one moment in time that kind of signified the start
I
of
feel
it?
like we always had chaos in our lives. If you're going to have 7 children, you're going to have chaos. And we just had a high tolerance for it, but it was chronic. And now looking back, I'm like, there are different ways we could have lived. Like we moved out and bought a house that I did not want to buy next door to my dad. I did not want to live next door to my dad and his third wife. And then we had to gut it and add on and live in a motorhome. And but when we lived in that house, and that's like my kids' favorite house, that's their childhood memories. It had, 2.5 acres and hills and a pond, but it had a failed septic system. So it couldn't keep up with us water wise. And so we lived in either out of water or overflowing septic way too much. And instead of figuring out, hey, we either need to move or we need to find a way to finance this, because we just didn't have the money to do it. So we never solved it. So we lived in it. We lived in the chaos. And so I used to go to Ethiopia quite a bit with my church and do medical missions or led a team of teens over there before. And I remember staying in some of the hotels and being like, my amenities here better than my amenities in Shepherd. There's a problem. And then we ended up in 2008 and 2009 in that housing crash. We were in the process of remodifying our loan that just continued to fall through the cracks. And so we ended from like 2008 to 2009 all the way to 2019 in like a legal disaster that taxed us emotionally a lot, that caused a lot of stress. They would have people knocking on our doors to demand occupancy, send really rude people driving by taking pictures while my kids are playing outside, and then it just was like chronic chaos like that.
So you were not used to it, but you were accustomed to it. So then when the chaos changed a different direction, it wasn't uncommon. It was just
I think when it shifted, we actually moved away from that house and gave up on the process of our legal battle, even though it was still somewhere in the legal system. We moved into a house that we were going to rent and hope to buy. It was a beautiful home, the most beautiful home we've ever lived in, and I just loved it. And while we were there, my son broke his leg in 5 or 6 places and moved back home. And then in the process of that, just really spiraled into a deep depression. And there was a time in, I think it was like June of 2018, that he just was doing terrible and it was affecting everybody. And so my then husband went in to have a conversation with him that it was just getting to a point that we were concerned and needed some intervention. And we didn't really have the skills and the knowledge, but he found my son in the process of hanging in his closet. And so that set off a bomb. But even if I back up further, one of the ways that I really damaged my kids the most was in the emotional realm of not knowing that Christians can be sad. Christians can be really sad. And dare I say, Christians can get depressed. So when my oldest daughter started coming to me about 13, and I do notice something in my kids about prepubescent in that hormonal change, you're getting a hormone wash over your brain. Your brain is changing, that they have struggled with depression at that age. But my daughter would have been the first one that started talking about it. And I remember her talking about suicide or not wanting to be here. And I literally just felt like it was my job to shut that crap down. We don't talk about that. Christians don't get that sad. Christians don't commit suicide. You need to read your Bible more. She has severe dyslexia. She wasn't going to pick up her Bible, okay? That was ridiculous. Read your Bible more and listen to more worship music and don't talk like this. And so basically, I taught her that something was wrong with her. How she was feeling, I considered to be non-Christian, and to shut that crap down, and that mom is not a safe person. And so those are one of the things. I wish I had a time machine and I could just go grab her little face in my hands and give her acceptance and just wrap my arms around her and tell her I loved her and that she was safe and that her feelings were safe with me.
But we don't know what we don't know.
And I didn't have the tools and I didn't have the knowledge. And so I was raising my kids in the way that I was raised, which is you shut that shit down and you stuff it as far down as you can. What I didn't know is physiologically the wrath that causes in the body. I didn't have the science background. I didn't have the psychology background. So I would almost, looking at it now, it's almost like a generational curse of stifling emotions.
It's crazy to see how your parents and what they talk about, how they act, how it affects you. It was a really stupid thing, and it, again, doesn't compare to your situation, but my dad would never let us use a dishwasher. Stupidest thing. We don't use enough dishes to dishwash.
He should have come had dinner at my house.
Yeah, he should have. He just stood there and washed them all by hand anyway. 'cause
I would have let him.
that's
Actually,
his
back then
culture.
I wouldn't have.
So he was like, we don't do enough dishes. And I'm the argumentative database person. I'm like, according to Google right here, it says that us washing dishes by hand wastes more water than a dishwasher. And you're complaining about water. Okay. But that was how I grew up in midlife. So I got to my first apartment and I had dinner and I washed the dishes by hand. And I stopped and I stared at the damn dishwasher.
What is that?
I opened it. I did my dishes in the dishwasher. But it was a moment of, wait a minute. That's his brain. I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And that's a great example of how narratives cognitively get stuck in our subconscious. It's not like my parents sat me down and said, emotions bad, Jesus good. They didn't indoctrinate me that way. But somehow there was a programming that landed in my subconscious so that it was so natural. That's what flowed out of me.
Yeah.
And that's just not God's best for us.
Yeah. Sure.
It's like taking a full, ferocious river and putting a dam on it and just wanting a trickle to come out.
Yep.
And living a life with a trickle.
Yeah. Yep. My mom has mental health problems and so does my brother. And my dad was always like super against medication. And I don't disagree fully. If you can find a natural way to take care of it, I recommend you do. We don't need to jump to pills all the time. But that was my fear when I started on my medication. I was like, I have to tell my dad that I'm on this, and I know he doesn't like that. That's crap. So I was afraid to tell him. But then I thought back on it. And I was, who am I to tell anybody how Jesus gives people healing? Our definition is not his definition. And maybe that's what that person needed. Maybe that's how they get relief.
And really, medication is the equivalent of a dishwasher for your dad.
100%.
It's just a narrative in his head. It probably is not even the most energy efficient way, but in the narrative in his mind is that's the best, most economical way because it's the way it's always been done. But there are times that we definitely need a little bit of cognitive support because we live in a world full of endocrine disruptors and toxins that are just in our environment that we don't even know. We don't even really know the effects of our toxic environment and food fully. We can see it in our health and we can see it in our mental health. So why wouldn't we try to nourish our body with better nutrition? They even say things like our soil is so depleted that even our vegetables don't have the nutrients that they used to have. And so it's like you could just eat really healthy, but then it's like how healthy is it's probably not comparable to 50 years ago. So we just live in a very disrupted world, which means our bodies are incredibly disrupted.
Yeah.
And so to me, I had mentioned to you in the past that after my son's suicide attempt, we had 2 more with plans or attempts in just a few short months. So it was just like boom. And I felt like the best way that I can describe it is that my glass castle of my family that I was trying to create, it was like somebody was throwing rocks at my beautiful glass castle and putting cracks in it. I think at the time I was like vice president of the Yellowstone Coalition of Home Educators. I was so embarrassed, and I felt like such a failure that my kids were struggling in this way because I still didn't get it. But I went from being a youth worker who worked with junior high and high school kids who I kept hearing the words, I had a panic attack today at school. And I would literally I wouldn't roll my eyes in there because that would have been rude. But in my mind, I was like, come on, girls. Like, seriously, knock it off. I just felt like it was a trendy thing to say until God blessed me with my first panic attack. And I really do think it was a blessing from God because I didn't believe they existed until I experienced it. And some people are just really stubborn that way.
Yeah.
And I needed at that time something to help me function because the trauma of the suicides caused a PTSD situation in my brain that caused a panic that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
And I could have my logical side telling me that the kid was not answering their phone because their phone was just dead. And it's calm down, calm down.
Yeah.
And then there was like this monstrous side that would just be like, they're dead. And literally telling the logic, shut up.
Yeah.
Like it was so out of control. And then you have the heart racing and the getting hot and the panic of, am I having a heart attack? I can't breathe. And I did need some assistance to get through that season of time. And so I am very thankful that was available. I'm also very thankful that I was curious to see, I didn't need it before, but if I still needed it. And so I think about a year ago, it took me about 6 months to very slowly get myself off it because most of your serotonin comes from your gut and gets sent up to your brain, and your body just doesn't need to make the serotonin like it did. And so if you cold turkey after being on it for 6 years, I got vertigo and felt very sick, and you definitely need to do it slowly. And honestly, if I came to the conclusion that I now have depression or anxiety and need to be on Lexapro because something has been altered in my brain, I would have been okay taking 20 milligrams of Lexapro the rest of my life. I'm thankful I don't have to because it's one less thing in my body, and my body is creating the serotonin it needs to. And I've gone back to before that where everything feels normal.
Yeah. Yeah. So after the attempts, would you say that was the first domino that started to push things?
Like I said, we lived in chronic chaos, but this was not chaos. This was earth shattering.
Yeah.
This was looking at losing a child, having a child that actively didn't want to be here. Even when they sent him home from the psych ward for 3 days, they're like, good luck. He still doesn't want to be here. Good luck. I remember he slept across the hall, and anytime there was a noise or a thump, like the panic in my chest of, do I go check? Do I not go check? Do I go check? Do I not go check? Was so much. And then to have multiple kids struggling, it's like, how many kids do I need to check on a night? And it was overwhelming. And so my life turned into getting all the kids in counseling, getting all the kids to their appointments. I had a pill thing like this big for all of the kids. It was overwhelming. And what I wish I had the knowledge I have now back then, because back then I thought all of a sudden I just had to do everything that the professionals said because they know best.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize is they really don't have a clue how SSRIs work. And it's like throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded, experimenting with your child and hoping it works. And all of that was a nightmare in and of itself. And then the psychiatrists and the counselors, like we have been through so many in town that it was just chaos and overwhelming. So obviously that was my focus, trying to keep kids alive. And then my heart was so shattered, and the enemy comes in and tries to tell you, this is your fault. Maybe if you hadn't homeschooled, they wouldn't be like this. And so my heart was so shattered that I couldn't fathom homeschooling. So I had to stick the 4 kids that were still school age in school, which was a huge adjustment because Hannah was special needs. I knew Naomi was dyslexic. In 4th grade, they just put you in regular 4th grade class and just see how it goes. That turned into a huge anxiety disorder for her. And at 4th grade, and she started saying things that she didn't want to be here, and because she's now parroting the narrative of the older kids, and that the things that she would say were just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So as I was navigating all of this, my ex-husband was just sleeping more, not showing up for work, not being consistent with his side business. And so he lost his side business, but it was our church. And they fired him over an email. And we have gone there for 20 years. So that hurt him really bad. And we can say, oh, it's going to be okay. God's in control. And those things are true. But in the moment, he was hemorrhaging from the heart. And the people that had our back had always been the church, and they just fired him. And I'm not saying they were wrong. I don't think that he was showing up and he was capable of getting the things done in that season. He was spread too thin and overpromising and under-delivering, but they could have done it in a much more relational way. And so I think that wounded him, and he just really started sleeping more, and other things were going on and choices that he was making, and things started happening behind the scenes that I really didn't know. And we weren't able to buy the house, and it didn't seem like he cared. And all of a sudden we were homeless, and I was packing a house, trying to fix. When you have 7 kids in a house, there's going to be damage and things you have to do. Yeah. And so I'm trying to fix all of that by myself, pack the house by myself, take care of the kids. And he just was absent, and he wasn't engaged in trying to help us find another house. And so we ended up pulling away from that house when we had to be out, and we had nowhere to go. I called my mom, and she was like, no, I'm sorry, not with the dogs. We called his parents, who owned a bed and breakfast, and they were like, no. We really didn't know where to go. And we ended up calling my niece out in Lockwood, who had a 1-bathroom house. She, out of all of our family, said, yes, get over here. We will take you. We'll figure it out. And we took my 5 girls, and then my boys were, I think, at my in-laws' bed and breakfast. That part of my life was so traumatic, I hardly remember it. But we were disheveled and displaced, and then he just pulled further and further away. And so I did find us a rental, and was so excited to get us into it, because the kids missed their toys, their Barbies, and it was time to we were going to just be there for 2 weeks. We were there, I think, August, September, October, November, and we moved in like maybe mid-December. The kids really wanted their Christmas tree and their Christmas decorations, and God just plopped this rental on my lap, and I was so excited, and we got to move in that weekend. And my husband of 24 years, being together for 26, just said, no, thank you. I had no idea he was going to say that. He said, no, thank you. I'm good. I'm going to stay here. And I said, excuse me? And that's about all I got out of him. I moved into the rental with my girls, and he stayed, but he was never really there. But I thought he was there, and he let it on that he was there. But I found out probably more than a year later that he was having an affair that whole time. That whole year, I was so positive that I could bet $1 million bajillion dollars that our marriage was solid and was going to be good, and that we enjoyed each other. That's when the rocks that were being thrown at my glass, it just a giant wrecking ball came and just knocked that mother just out.
Wow. So you're living in a rental that you had to find, which you also had to pay for, I assume, at that point?
He had a job at that point, and so I assumed he was going to pay for it. And so I think for the first few months he did, and then he just said he was living in his truck in the mountains. And the sweet Sunday school Sally part of me was just like, okay, have fun. I'll just take care of the babies. I've done everything by myself already, so whatever. But he actually ended up quitting his job for like over a year, I think. And so for 2 years, I had zero child support whatsoever. I went from being a stay-at-home mom to having to figure out how to put food on the table and keep paying my rental through COVID and everything. But God was so good. I actually just was prompted last night. Somebody gave me this little prayer box and it has little papers in it. And I started around 2020 writing down every time I thought a miracle had happened in the box. I haven't thought about it in a long time. And I was prompted last night to find it. And so I laid in bed last night and read through all of the things that I have written down, and I just cried. Like his goodness in such a tumultuous, heartbreaking time. I didn't think that I would be able to survive. And I'm not just talking financially without my husband. He was my high school sweetheart, my best friend, the love of my life. So I thought, I didn't know if my lungs would work, if my heart would still beat, if anything could be right again.
Yeah.
It was so devastating to my core.
And then out of that, bore your first business.
Yes, to scramble and be scrappy. I was cleaning houses and helping people downsize and organize and move and just whatever I could find out there. One of my little miracle pages that I read yesterday was like, I sold a bunch of stuff out of the garage and I made enough to pay rent. Thank you, Jesus. It was touch and go every month.
Yeah.
And God just always was faithful and provided. And my prayer was, God, you keep bringing the work and keep my body functioning, and I will show up and I will work my tail off. And that's just what kept happening. And in the process, I was doing some paint projects. I had one lady, Sandy Gilry, tell me, gosh, you're really good at this. You're good. You're fast. You're clean. And that's the first time I had ever heard that. And then I did a paint job for a contractor friend of mine, Tim Davis. And he said the same thing. Teresa, you're good. You're clean. You're fast. You could make a business out of this. You can make a living out of this. And I was like, what? And so I was getting really busy with houses and I was getting more paint jobs. And I just had to make a decision. Do I want to be Teresa Cleans or Teresa Paints? I chose painting because I like it. And not that I don't like cleaning, but I do like painting. And this fall, it will be 6 years that I've had Teresa Paints. And again, my prayer has always been, you bring the jobs and I will show up. And in those first few years, there were lots of things I was being asked to do that I had no idea. And I even humbly let some people know, like the first exterior I painted was in ironwood. And I was like, guys, I haven't done this before. And they're like, we've seen your interior work. You're going to be just fine. So God put people in my life that trusted me.
Favor.
And trusted me with their $800,000 house. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's whack.
And I did a beautiful job. I didn't spray. I hand brushed it and rolled it, and it was beautiful. And if I didn't know how to do something, I just literally watched a YouTube video, and I was like, I can do this. Instead of having this naysayer in my head, it was like, girl, that's so above your pay grade or whatever. I had this cheerleader in my head that was like, you can do this. Yeah. And I think part of that too was that I was in a growth group through this whole thing, the Townsend Leadership Program. It's TLP for short. And I've been in that group for over 5 years. And so I had these people cheering me on. And when you surround yourself with people like that who speak into you, who you trust, it's like their voices get internalized in here and in here. And so they became my cheerleader in my head, which also has morphed into my self-talk. I used to have such negative self-talk and beat myself up and, oh, you're so stupid. And why did you say that? And now I have a cheerleader, and that's like rewiring your brain. But we rewire our brain through changing our stinking thinking. And in the process of learning and showing myself over and over that I can do these things, I gained a cheerleader and a friend in myself.
Yeah.
And some confidence that I did not have before.
So I remember from our previous talks, one of your group leaders, you were going through a hard time and you were questioning things, and Can you remind me what she said?
Yes, it's ingrained. It is deep. Is it okay to cuss on here?
I don't care.
Okay, because I used to not be able to cuss because I'm a pastor's kid and I was a golden child and you don't cuss.
Yeah.
The more that I have grown and morphed and clung to Jesus more, the more I just feel like that doesn't matter. So things fly out of my mouth now. And I'm also a contractor. So contractors have dirty mouths. So
There it is.
anyway, I remember like crying in one of our group sessions and just being like, I don't know what to do. I've been a stay-at-home mom for over 20 years. I homeschooled my kids. There were times I wanted to help out financially in our married life. And my husband actually said, I can make more money, which at the time was true. What can you do besides clean toilets and change diapers? That echoed in my soul. What else can I do? This is all that I have. And it's not that those were bad things. Keeping my house clean and taking care of my babies, I will be so thankful for that for the rest of my life. But I was put on here to be more than a mom and a wife. Not to say those are little things, but I have a story. I have a heart. I have passions. And so in that group, when I was a puddle steeped in victimhood, there is a portion where I was victimized. This wasn't my choice. I was the victim. But she looked me in the eye and said, Teresa, you're a grown-ass woman. You can do whatever the fuck you want.
Amen.
And since then, that's exactly what I've been doing.
It was a potent message.
Yes. And back then, I would say the F word offended me, but I was just like, she said it, because that was several years ago. But it has bounced around in my head and soul and become a marching song.
I think what I love about it most is it was so authentic.
It was. It wasn't a spiritual platitude. It wasn't a trust and obey and everything will go
Open
your way.
Bible
Or read your Bible, pray every day, and you will grow. There was no spiritual platitude. It was gritty. It was slightly offensive. And
It's true.
so true.
Yeah.
I forgot that there's a big, beautiful, magical world out there. If I want to go back to school in my 40s, who cares? Who's to tell me I can't?
Yeah.
I forgot that I could be whatever I wanted to be. And so it just really started making me think. I love running Teresa Paints, and I hope to run it for as long as God keeps bringing me jobs. Physically, it's not a long-term plan. Like I'm hoping to really take care of myself, that I'm hoping through my 50s. I've got some female painter friends that are in their 60s and they do smaller projects now, but I wanted something that I felt a passion about and that could be sustaining for me throughout my life. And sitting with people and getting to love on people in a therapeutic sense just really kind of lit me up as to what my future could look like.
I like that. The timing of the Lord is crazy. Yesterday I got a weird moment, but growing up, since I was 12, I had my own business. Started as a dog walker, picked up dog poop, worked at churches, then I ran my own business. And I got stuck in that mentality of there's nothing else. I am a business owner and that is it. This is what I'm stuck in. This is it. This is all I have. And the Lord has always, I felt, audibly told me when I can leave a season. First one was at a church. After the pastor told me I wasn't gifted anymore.
You lost it? Was it in the lost and found in the
It was
lobby?
just like that thought that goes up into the ceiling. I just lost it. It didn't come back.
Gosh. Hope that never happens to me.
So then at that moment, I heard the small, still voice say, you can leave now. And I didn't realize that I was stuck in that because I was in it all day. I loved it. I loved it. It's all I knew. It was all that was in my head. And when he said you released from it, I was like, oh, wait. The rest of my life doesn't have to be working in a church. That's crazy. And I just had that thing last night. He said, you can let this go. And I'm like, for one, identity crisis. What am I then? For one, I'm a child of God. But also, the amount of joy that came into my mind when I thought of just looking at Indeed for a job. I was like, there's more to this. There's more to life. Not that I'm going to drop this and close it and just shut it down.
You know,
But
I just heard, gosh, I can't remember what his name is, on a podcast, and he said we need to get better at quitting. Like when
Yeah.
it's like it's a social construct to think that you're going to go to college, pick a career, and you are going to work in it until retirement. Then you're going to retire and enjoy your grandbabies, and you're going to golf. That's a social construct.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit our society anymore. Our society has shifted. And nobody wants to be a cog in somebody else's wheel anymore.
Yep.
We don't want to show up, punch a clock, be not appreciated, have our ideas not cared about, and then punch a clock and go home. There's so much like creativity and desire to feel a part of something that has come alive that I think is a really beautiful thing. If Teresa Paines started to become more stress, it would be okay for me to say, this was a great 6 years, but I'm going to close this chapter.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. Another thing I heard on that same podcast was that one of the greatest lies we tell ourselves is that we have to have everything planned out and figured out before we take that first step. And we don't. I started a business without a business plan, without a business degree,
Without processes.
without any processes or software. I just started working my ass off. That's it. I started giving myself a good reputation that I do what I say, I charge what I say, I'll show up when I say. I started caring for my customers. I started getting better and honing what I do. And then in the process of that, I also went and got a bachelor's and a master's. And with my bachelor's, I have a minor in business. And I didn't do anything the way they tell you to do it. You don't always have to have everything figured out and have step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And frankly, that's not my wiring. My wiring is like to throw a bowl of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. That was a pivotal time because when I did confront my ex-husband about the affair, the conversation was very arrogant and very ugly and very hurtful. He was very prideful. He wasn't broken or sad. He basically told me that he was so special and I didn't see how special he was, but she does. And he said, now you get to ride off into the sunset like the little victim you are. I knew that I didn't want to ride off into the sunset. And frankly, I run 2 businesses now. I network Billings like crazy. I love Billings. I love the business community. People don't even know my ex-husband's name. A lot of people just think he died because I don't really talk about him. They just know Teresa Bybee. Before, I was only Larry's wife.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to step out under that shadow, and God has written into my DNA that I wasn't created to be a victim of anything.
Yep.
When I see myself back in that time and the phoenix rising out of the ashes is what comes to mind. I was transformed in that fire that could have crumbled me and that should have crumbled me, but not with God by my side. And I got to fly out of there like a phoenix, transformed into something beautiful.
And you didn't even smell like smoke.
And I don't even smell like smoke.
It's redemption.
It is redemption.
Your story is a story where God worked in such a miraculous way that it just cleans Jesus. And it's beautiful.
Yes, because who am I? I am just one of so many women that get left in middle age with kids. And it wasn't just a normal, hey, let's do 50-50. I'll keep the kids. It was like a bye-bye. Bye-bye to you, bye-bye to you, bye-bye to you, to everybody. And I'm not saying that there was a conscious decision on his part, but he was just gone. And he's still gone to this day. And he's actually so wrapped in guilt and shame that until that, if he ever allows God, if he ever humbles himself at the feet of the cross for those scales to fall off and be humbled and broken and see the choices that he's made and the fallout behind him, there's just like a row of dead bodies. But God calls those dead bodies back to life.
Yep.
It was really honestly like a Lazarus situation for me. I was ready to lay in my bed and die. And I'm not talking like suicide. It was literally like, I don't think I'm going to be able to function without him, and I'm going to disappear into this mattress until I am no more. But Jesus had a different plan for me.
Yeah. Can you talk more about Captain Crunch and wine?
You want to talk about my weight gain? Thanks, Keone. That's cool.
No, I need to go try that combo. Like the cut the roof of your mouth kind of thing. But
It's go chew some glass.
I get the business ownership, stand at the abyss, eat some glass.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
But can you walk us through what the mindset was? Because all of this that happened, I couldn't even imagine.
There was a season of
start to fathom.
victimhood. I was victimized by this situation and I didn't know what to do with it. And I think there was deep grief in that, especially because I was so shocked. It literally caused a shock to the cells of my body. I was so shocked. People are like, you didn't see it coming? Oh, I saw it coming. I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yeah, no, shut up.
People always want to say stupid things. I'm like, no, you didn't. We golfed like 4 or 5 times a week and just laughed hysterically together. Like we had fun together. This was a shock.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel good in my body. If I didn't have my kids to get up for, I'm not sure if I could have pulled through. My youngest was like 8 or 9. So I had like 4th and 5th graders and they needed me because they were shattered too. Being abandoned as a child, when you're so confused, he would pop in once or twice a week and give them hugs and promise them that he would never divorce their mom and that everything was going to be okay. He just needed time to figure things out. And I didn't know what that meant, but I just tried to give him space. I would have gluten-free muffins ready for him because at that time he wasn't eating gluten. I don't know what he's doing now, but like I really was trying to love on him in that year the best that I could. But then once the divorce happened, I decided to go back to school. And in that process of working during the day, getting kids to and from school, feeding them, sometimes they would eat stuff out of the air fryer because I was now doing school. But I would stay up late at night and study and do my coursework. And I fell in love with Captain Crunch. And I never had really drank in my whole life and fell in love with Merlot.
Yeah.
It was an interesting combination. Before divorce, I was walking every day. I had lost a bunch of weight and I had kept it off for several years. And then not walking and then allowing Captain Crunch and the sugar and blizzards. My girls never had blizzards until we lived at my niece Haley's house. And then we were getting blizzards all the time in Lockwood. And we still to this day, some of my kids have a blizzard addiction. But
I'm going to go get a blizzard after this.
But yeah, it was a hustle and a grind. And I really kept myself slightly distracted from the depth of grief because I didn't think I would be able to come up from the bottom of the lake that grief felt like. And school kept me distracted and allowed me to grieve in chunks without being so overwhelmed by it.
Yeah. The resilience is just, I have to tell people that and these people don't know this, but we've recorded this episode dos.
Take 2.
But after hearing the first one, so I told my barber about your story. I didn't divulge your information, of course.
Social security number still safe?
Yes,
Okay.
so is your blood type. But she was a single mom, and I was like, okay, should probably talk about something other than partying and drugs, because that's kind of what she likes to talk about. So I was like, your story just came up, and I like the resiliency of this woman is amazing. She started here. She went through all this, and now she's got 2 degrees, 2 businesses, and is just kicking ass. And it gave her inspiration. It gave her hope.
And see that. If our trials and tribulations can't point people to hope, then what is the point?
Yeah.
I don't know how God will unfold this in the future, but I have such a heart for women who find themselves with the responsibility of a child 100% of the time and a dad that is not involved, to just come alongside of them and be like, you're a grown-ass woman.
Yeah.
You could do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
and just let them know. The reason I know is because I did.
Yep.
And I'm not done.
No.
I'll probably go back
No.
and get a couple more degrees because why not? Because I like school, because I didn't know that was part of my wiring. And I am finding out more of how God wired and created me at 48. And it's not that he didn't create me to be a wife and a mom, because that is very much part of who I am. The problem that I have when I look back, or when we indoctrinate little girls with they just need to be a wife and a mom, is that there is so much more to a
Yeah.
human than those two roles.
Yeah.
I was a friend. I could have nurtured my friendships better. I could have gone to school all those years and have 300 degrees by now.
You could have been working at Stanford.
Yeah, I could have started an at-home business. There was so many things that I could have done while getting to be a mom. I still am so filled with gratitude that I got to stay home with my kids, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted them to be with me, and I wanted to be with them. And so I will never regret those years. I'll never regret having the babies in my 20s and half my 30s, and then raising kids, and then going to school in my mid 40s. Like, I think that timeline is hilarious, and I love it.
Yeah. Looking for a relationship, I've always told myself that I cannot have someone who is dependent. Not because I don't want to take care of them, because I do. I want to love on you, and I want to give you gifts, but you need to be your own person. I need to be my own person.
The psychological word is the word autonomy. We are an autonomous human being. You are Keone all by yourself. I was no longer Teresa Bybee all by myself. I was a wife and a mom, and those are beautiful roles. I'm not negating that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go back and trade homeschooling and being a stay-at-home mom. But there was so much more in me that I didn't have the opportunity, but now I do.
It's like God said, but wait.
Mm-hmm.
The church uses that scripture, submit to your husbands, very out of context, and very much in a oppressive
It's an
manner.
oppressive way to keep women down.
What is the point of that?
No.
She needs to be in relationship with the king. I need to be in relationship with the king. And we need to come to the king together.
And it's not like that verse isn't in the Bible. The part that's neglected so much is the second half, where it says, husbands, you're to love your wife. Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So if a husband gave up his life for his wife, what does that mean? I think that is the higher calling. That is the harder thing. A husband is asked to lay down his life for his wife.
Yeah,
But we focus on the first half because that's convenient
of course.
in a patriarchal,
And
society.
it doesn't, I can't say it doesn't hurt feelings, because that's incorrect.
Oh, it does hurt feelings. But I was raised since a little girl, so it felt just normal and natural to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times where I was like, this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And my opinion didn't matter because I was the woman, and he would do it anyway, and it would hurt us financially. And so there's this balance and this give and take, and God has wired each of you differently, and it should be a beautiful blend. Not that it's always easy, but where you're helping each other, and it's not like this dictatorship.
Yeah. Very true.
And I think that you are correct. Like, having a woman that is her own person, there's like an enmeshment that can happen. That's another psychological word. When I was not Teresa Bybee anymore, I was Larry's wife. I was enmeshed,
Yeah.
and that's not a good thing. And so the pulling apart of that, it was really painful. I didn't have credit. Nothing was ever bought in my name. I didn't have anything. No cars, no houses, nothing was ever in my name. So I started over in my mid-40s with no credit. And it's still hard for me. I'm like, guys, you see my account. I'm running 2 businesses. I'm fine. I can make this payment. When the transmission and engine were having problems in my Suburban and I needed a new car, I read it on my little miracle sheet last night in my little prayer box. Stockman Bank told me no. And I've been with Stockman Bank prior to divorce. And I argued with them. in a respectful way.
Yeah.
But I was like, who is going to give me a chance? And here's why I know I can make that payment. And here's why that you're going to give me the chance. And they were like, okay. Sometimes we just don't stick up for ourselves and we just take no as in no. But I was like, no as in you're just not informed enough to know why you should say yes.
Yeah, 100%.
I was basically living under a credit rock for my entire half my adult life. I'm still in the process of that, but that's something that I encourage young women to never repeat, because nobody gets married thinking we're going to get divorced someday. It's going to be the most romantic divorce ever. And even some Christians would say planning or making safety nets for that is wrong. It would be the same thing to say medication is wrong. Like, we live in a fallen world where shit happens.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect the domino effects that happened in my life. I could have been set up a little bit better for myself in a situation like this. And I think it would be a very kind and loving thing for a husband to do, to make sure that while he's building his credit, he's also building her credit, and they're building their credit together. As far as young 20-somethings getting married, I'm like, just don't, even if you stay home and it's more convenient for him to sign all the paperwork because you're at home with the kids, don't do that.
To me, it's more of as a husband, what goes through my mind is, what if I'm gone?
That's the thing too. Husband drops dead. I have a friend this happened to a couple of years ago. I still would have had no credit.
Yeah.
Whether he left me or died and left me. It's either way, it is in the best interest of both parties to be able to stand on their own if need be.
I could walk outside and just be gone today. And I think we all need a reality check of this thing that we're in doesn't last forever. It's borrowed breath. And we should really stop thinking that it's all us. Because when you're gone, guess what? What's left? And not only what's left, but who's left and what do they have to carry? When you die, your credit debt doesn't go away. It goes down the line. So I think we need to be more cognizant of the ether around us and how things affect in waves. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just didn't have the knowledge, and I probably would have thought preparing for something to happen would either be fear-based, which would be wrong, or I couldn't even fathom a divorce being a possibility, not even a possibility. Because Christians don't get divorced. Even they get divorced the same amount as non-Christians.
Yeah.
But in my mind, good Christians don't get divorced. Yikes. I said that judgy. And it's how I felt.
Yeah.
It was so earth-shattering on so many levels that I am now who I had judged.
We're all messy. We're all broken. And I really wish that we would just start admitting that, because it's so draining from an outside person looking in. It's draining to be falling apart and have this group of people that just seems like they've got it together. Mm-hmm. And I'm expected to be with them and be messy.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. And it goes back to that ferocious river full of life and vitality being dammed and only having a trickle. If people want to live their life in a trickle, which is how I was raised, as far as like emotions, which emotions were acceptable, you're a pretty boring person. You don't have the greatest of joys. You don't have the depths of sorrow. And so people walk around very stifled in the church, as well as they're not being authentically real.
Yeah.
And I'm in the stage where I don't have the energy for fake people. I really don't. Like, if we're going to do this, we're going to be real and vulnerable and raw. And if that's not something you're comfortable with, we're just probably going to be acquaintances. And it's not like this is how I approach people, like at Walmart. Hey, you're in or you out?
You going to get messy or not?
Otherwise, there's the door. No, I crave authenticity and rawness and realness. And I can't give that or receive that if I haven't learned how to be that within myself and with my own narratives and in my own head And in my own spiritual life, a lot of times we lie to ourselves about who we are and what we've done, and we lie to God.
Yeah.
And we can't be authentic, broken people who love the Lord, who shine his light and his glory to the world if we are going to pretend that we are perfect.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work that way.
No. Light shines through the cracks. Let your cracks be visible.
Not your crack.
No, not your crack. You're not a plumber. Put it away.
Let's specify,
Let's
Keone.
specify. You're depicting an image of a vase.
Yes, it's one of my favorite pictures, actually.
Your vase is cracked.
It's been cracked and re-glued so many darn times.
It's not the same vase.
It's not the same, and it might not be as picturesque and beautiful, but when the lights go out and the light is in that cracked vase, it all of a sudden illuminates beauty that
And
it
it's
didn't before.
so much stronger because a regular vase is clay. When a vase is cracked and broken, back in Hebrew times, it was mended together with gold. So now you've got more gold in your vase than most people. Not only is that highly treasured and highly valued, it's got a lot of depth. And it's a light that will never go out.
And a pretty vase will only look pretty when the light is on. And we are called to shine in a dark world. If we like to play this facade game that our life is just perfect,
Yeah.
and we don't get to be that light in the darkness
No.
because we're living a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. You've dimmed your light. I feel like I needed to share this. Last night I kind of went through a weird thing. Don't really know what it was, but what I'm getting from it. There was a group of people staring and pointing and infatuated with this golden structure. And I've wanted to have the prayer that God does it in such a miraculous way that there's no way they could see anything but Jesus. And I was given this image of these people, and Jesus is standing in the back, behind everybody. And he said, I want to take cancer away. I want things that are broken to be fixed. But nobody will turn around and look at me. Nobody will come to me. And it felt like he said, all I want is my children. I just want you. I just want my children. I want to do these works, but people just won't turn around yet. So I'd say to anyone watching, he wants to do amazing things in your life. He wants to take your life and flip it upside down. But until we can get real and authentic and understand that we're looking at the wrong temple and know that we stood in a crowd of people and did the wrong thing and looked the wrong direction, nothing will happen until that does. And that takes honesty.
I just had a light bulb moment while you were talking about my entire life.
Let's hear it.
So you know how I mentioned that my dad was on a pedestal and he got knocked down and it rocked my world?
Yeah.
I think my marriage was on a pedestal and it had to get knocked down for me to be authentic. That's going to make me cry. I'm going to try to keep it together. But when God is in it, we don't need to be afraid of it. I lost my marriage and God has given me a life I could have never planned or expected on the other side of that. And I feel like I really loved the first half of my life a lot. I loved my marriage, even though looking back, there are things I could have done differently and wish would have happened differently with the knowledge I have now. But the second half of my life, that's going to be the cherry on top.
I've always had this. I've looked at life as a river. Most of the time, what's best for me is downstream. I can't see that. It's probably on the other side of a waterfall. Probably there's a big drop somewhere, but I feel that the push of water against my chest is progress. And that challenge is motion. It's not. I'm walking on a treadmill and wasting energy going nowhere. And I had the epiphany that if I turned around and let the water push me where it needed to go, not only would I get to where I needed to go faster, but I'd get to the place I needed to go to when and how I needed to go to it. I might pass through valleys, I might pass through some dips, I might fall off a waterfall, but my destination is not where I was looking.
You might stumble into a bowl of Captain Crunch in a couple of degrees. I didn't plan on any of that.
But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And I realized that in life, this is just a general purpose, and I'll say Jesus in it because I feel like that applies, but in life, you can choose to run and run in place. Eventually, the river's going to bring a rock. You're going to trip. Eventually, something will humble you like a rock. Or you could turn around, lay on your back, and float. If people would just realize that they don't have to run upstream by themselves, and that you can turn around, float on the river with a group of other people on tubes, because life will humble you one way or another. And I don't like that. I don't like the fall.
We're told that in this life we will have many troubles. So being a Christian, if you have the mindset that being a Christian exempts you from that, it does not. It actually says it will probably get a little harder. And in our day and age, like, you can't even be considered a Christian without being considered an intolerant hater.
Yeah.
I'm the furthest from an intolerant hater. And we just live in such a crazy time, but it's also such a beautiful time to just get to show up and be love.
Yeah.
And I don't have to have down the river figured out.
No.
It's like, this is the present day that I have. And I get to love the people today. And I get to wake up tomorrow and do what I need to do tomorrow and just walk this out one day at a time and not have it all figured out, because I know that he does. And he has made it so evident to me that he's always got.
Crazy connection time again. I just pray, Jesus, give me the bread for the day. Not the bread for tomorrow, just today. Because that's what Scripture says. I will give you your daily bread.
It would have to be gluten-free for me.
He's got it.
He's accommodating. It's fine.
He'll give you manna. Then the verse, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough worries of its own. The purpose is not for you to think that far ahead, cause worry and stress. I'm not saying don't plan. You do need to have a plan and a structure. But if you focus on the bread for today and know that it's provided for, tomorrow will worry about itself. And I don't know what the future holds, but I know he holds it. And I don't need anything else.
That's how I walk my days out. I don't know what the future holds. I'm really excited about it. I'm just going to keep painting and sitting with people that come through my door and loving on them and helping them get curious about the things that they do and the narratives and the patterns in their life. And that's enough for me.
I love it. We are at almost 2 hours.
Wowzers.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of cutting out from the light.
if you're watching the video version of this, I'm not going to take the time.
You got to cut them all out, Keone. It's YouTube. Nobody cares.
No.
Some hater will say something. Just know that.
And if you want to edit this video, please be my guest. But with that being said, find something worth plowing for. Because if you make it through the snow, you'll definitely grow.
Look at you.
It was great having you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having the confidence to sit and share that.
Yeah.
I hope that it helps someone.
Me too.
I hope that someone gets something from it.
Me too.
And that's the show. Thank you so much for being here. If you stayed this long, I know it's hard to keep attention, and attention is important and valuable, so thank you. Until the next one, Goodbye.
Goodbye.